take you back now to your childhood and innocence. You remember all those white Christmases? No?
OK.
No?
I remember one.
Yeah.
1971.
1970, the January was 71.
There you go.
Christmas itself, 1970. Had you said yes, I would buzz you, because you don't remember any, because you're from the southeast. You might remember a few more, because South Shields has had more. We've actually tried to work out how many white Christmases you've had. We think you might have had them when you were 1, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 9.
Wow.
Which is actually quite a lot.
That is quite a lot.
Because in the whole of the 20th century, if you lived in London or the southeast, there were only 4 white Christmases. I know. It is extraordinary. And they were in 1927, 1938, 1970 and 1981. As we know, in the 21st century, we've had a few. But what's important about this is that in the early part of the 19th century, around about 1812 to 1820, there were 8 in a row.
Oh.
Now, why was that important to our culture?
Is that when the song was written?
No.
No.
A certain child was born in 1812. We were
Jesus.
Norman, you really do need a little bit of a religious education. This was an author, a writer, who created the idea.
Charles Dickens.
Okay,
Charles Dickens. For the first 8 years of his life, it always snowed on Christmas Day. And so whenever he mentions Christmas, not just in A Christmas Carol, but in several other novels, it's always snowing. And this helped the myth in British culture of a snowy Christmas. He also lived at a time known as the Little Ice Age. You know this, I'm sure you've seen paintings of fairs on the River Thames.
Yeah.
There were times when the River Thames froze so solidly, they would have fairs, not just fairs, they'd have bonfires on the ice.
Those crazy cockneys.
Yes. they could guarantee...
Light a fire up.
Yeah.
It's freezing. Let's light a fire on the river on the ice. What could possibly go wrong?
But the odd thing is, nothing did go wrong, because it was so thick, the ice. The last Frost Fair, as they were called, was in 1813-14 on the frozen River Thames. Wow. But anyway, this century we've had more white Christmases, as we know, but only 4 in the entire 20th century, and only 2 in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
More in Scotland. I'm really being very metrocentric here, and I apologise. What does the Queen do after Christmas lunch?
As a That's what everyone else does during the Queen's speech.
Do they?
They go for a walk. They go to church.
No, they go to church in the morning, definitely, St Mary Magdalene in Sandringham. But they've furnished us with remarkable details, I have to say, the royal family.
Does that mean that somebody from the office is going to be tuning in to see how these details were handled?
Yes.
And they're likely to be thrilled at the sensitive way in which the Queen's Christmas Day has been described.
So far, that's why I've been wriggling slightly. But just to get it out of the way, the answer is she goes into the saloon and watches herself on television. On Christmas Eve, right, they gather in the White Drawing Room at Sandringham around a 20-foot Christmas tree cut from the Sandringham estate. And I want to add here, at the risk of being booed, that I get my tree from the Sandringham estate. It's decorated by the Queen herself.
What, your tree?
My tree, no.
Did she come round to do it? I bet you send her out in the garden. No, do it out in the garden.
At 5 p.m, the whole family has a cup of Earl Grey, except the Queen, who has her own Indian blend.
Is it Twinings?
I hope so. This is turning into a massive embarrassment all round. They have sandwiches, cakes and scones. At 6 p.m, they open presents. This is Christmas Eve, remember. Why do they open presents on Christmas Eve?
Because they're all f***ing mad.
No, because they're all f***ing German. It's German to do. Well, there you are. The Queen gives the signal. They give each other practical presents, it turns out. The Queen is said to have been delighted...
With a gun.
Oh,
that's bloody brilliant!
No, with a casserole dish and a gift-wrapped washing-up apron.
I think it's one of those ones with tits on it.
After dinner, after Christmas Eve dinner, the Queen and the other female royals leave the room with the corgis. Prince Philip then serves port... Prince Philip then serves port or brandy to the male members of the royal family.
Oh,
when-
for God's
Right,
sake.
well, that's tradition. It's tradition. If I told you this,
only loincloth.
exactly. If I told you this about an Aboriginal tribe, you'd say, "Oh, how interesting." So it's just it's tribal behaviour. That's all. It's interesting, I think. They get stockings on Christmas morning.
Philip gets stockings.
No,
Serving the brandy.
no, this is next morning. They all have at the foot of their bed.
He wears them all night.
The family pulls crackers, but the Queen refuses to wear her paper party hat. And then at 3 p.m., they go to the saloon to watch me on Christmas Day. And who is that there on the screen?
Tony
Tony
Robinson.
Robinson.
And there is a Tony Robinson,
Yeah.
Baldrick, who's about to come on. But in the First World War, as you probably know and we've covered before, there was a Christmas football truce.
Yes.
But what happened later, in 1915, was that because football had been banned at Christmas Day, a soldier smuggled into the trench a football. It was deflated so that no one would spot it. And then he blew it up before the Battle of Loos. And in the morning, when the whistle blew to commence the offensive, he threw it out of the trench, shouting, "Play up, London Irish," because it was from the London Irish Regiment, which I'm sure you'll be aware of.
Yeah,
And-
great regiment.
And they found the football when they got to the German trench. They kept it. And it so happens a member of that London Irish happens to be called Tony Robinson, and is therefore always called Baldrick by his fellows. And he has brought that football along today. Darling, take that man's name and address.
When they said
This really is Tony the football.
It is indeed just the
And
football.
where is it kept?
It's kept in the museum, which is now down in Camberwell at the London Irish Rifles.
Is it called the London Irish Regiment or the London Regiment?
We're D Company London Irish Rifles of the London Regiment.
Right, D Company. And it's still an active regiment in the British Army, and we have some of your fellow soldiers over here. If you'd like to stand up, here they are. Fabulous to see you, boys. They're all recently back from Helmand province in Afghanistan.
This is a very historic year for Irish soldiers.
Tell me why.
Well, last May, all Irish soldiers who deserted the Irish
Oh,
Army...
yes, have been...
I haven't finished
Sorry,
the
no, sorry.
All soldiers who deserted the Irish Army in both First World War and Second World War periods and joined the British Army to fight for the British Army were granted a pardon.
That is extraordinary, isn't it?
Well, it's too late now, they're dead.
Almost all of them. Almost all of them are dead. But it was true, wasn't it, that if you were Irish and anti-fascist, say,
Yes.
and you wanted to fight for the Allies against Germany, and so you joined the British Army, it was considered by the Irish government that you were a traitor.
Correct.
You got no pension, you couldn't work for the government.
No. And
any
you
other
actually-
time
you could
had,
barely
went-
go home.
And yeah, indeed. But thank you very much, and please sit down. Members of D Company, thank you so much. Anyway, Baldrick,
Sir.
I've never seen you looking better.
Yes,
Still an absolute disaster of a human being. Thank you so much for bringing me lunch. I'm not very hungry. You can take it away.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much indeed. Wonderful. Tony Robinson. So, yeah, that football you've just seen was kicked right across no man's land by Rifleman Frank Edwards and the London Irish in 1915. As we're in the Christmas spirit, let's have a little sing-song. What's everybody's favourite bit in that traditional song, the 12 Days of Christmas? Which is your favourite bit?
Lord's Leaping.
For me, it's the gold rings.
Yeah.
'cause everybody
Yeah.
knows that.
Yeah.
5 gold rings.
Can that be wrong if you're asked what his favourite...
He's leading the witness.
I asked what his... I asked what his favourite bit was in the traditional English song, and it's not traditional. It's a recent addition.
There's a man called Austin who wrote that arrangement in which it went 5 gold rings, and that bit alone is copyright and belongs to Novello, and you pay for.
All right, so we've just blown the BBC's budget.
The whole BBC. It's a bit like Happy Birthday to You. You can't sing or whatever in films, or at least if you do, you have to pay enormous royalties because the lyrics are still not in public domain.
I was told at school that it was code. It was supposed to be an aide-memoire to something. Yeah. I don't know what.
Well, there are these games you can play that are like, in my trunk I'm going to pack, and the first person says a pair of swimming trunks, and the second one has a pair of swimming trunks and a book. So it's that thing, it's a memory thing. There's a version I play called Christopher Biggins Has Up His Bottom Tonight, and you have to remember the person. You go, Christopher Biggins has up his bottom tonight, and you go, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the next person says, Christopher Biggins has up his bottom tonight, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it has to begin with the last letter of Schwarzenegger, and...
Rodney Bewes.
Rodney Bewes, exactly. Christopher Biggins has up his bottom tonight, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Rodney Bewes, and then the next person goes, Christopher Biggins has his bottom tonight.
Steve Davis, the snooker player.
Brilliant! And you go on until you can't remember, and you get a huge
Simon
list.
Sharma.
You usually find that Christopher...
Anthony Andrews.
Christopher is astoundingly accommodating. That's the great thing about the game. And it goes on. It's a fun party game. I can't recommend it.
Is this why he was made King of the Jungle? This particular skill?
Well, the fact is, the song 12 Days of Christmas is a traditional, non-copyright song, with the exception of 5 Gold Rings, which was added by Frederick Austin and is owned by Novello and Company.
Where does Santa Claus come from?
From St. Nicholas. St. Nicholas.
Yes, what place?
The Bohemia, Czechoslovakia. No?
Not quite. No.
God.
Any thoughts?
Russia.
No.
He's an Aborigine.
Woking.
No.
Lapland.
Bavaria.
Did you say Lapland? Oh, dear, oh, dear, oh, dear, oh, dear, oh, dear, oh.
And I just saw North Pole.
Yes, so you're not going to say that, are you?
No.
Syria.
Turkey.
Yes! Quite
Bingo.
right. Turkey, yes. And that was real Santa Claus, St. Nicholas.
Happy Christmas!
Yeah, but he was...
Tzatziki, vine leaves.
Sinterklaas, as they call him in the Netherlands. Yeah, Sinterklaas is aangekomt, is their little song. I'll give you some points if you can tell me where precisely our modern view, as it is, of Father Christmas comes from.
Does it derive from the Gemütlichkeit culture of that Prince Albert brought to Britain in the 1840s?
Again, you're just chiming with the thought that fills the room, but no.
Yes.
No. It's... No, the Schleswig-Holstein Gemütlichkeit culture is not an issue here. It is a very extraordinary thing. I want to take you to the year 1822.
Oh, when Schubert wrote the Unfinished Symphony.
Something else happened. A poem was written, which absolutely gave us, for the first time ever printed or ever recorded, as far as we know, the idea of the white beard, the red coat, the stockings, the chimney, the presents on Christmas Eve, the whole thing. Americans still quote it every Christmas time.
It was the night before Christmas.
It was the night before Christmas. Clement Clark Moore, who was professor of Hebrew. And the poem was called A Visit from St. Nicholas.
Off his face on Laudanum, just sitting there. A big fat man with a beard and a red coat. This is fantastic. And he's got a sack full of gripples. No.